very much. Thank you very much for being here. And when we start talking about peace, it may seem to be quite abstract. But what we're going to do in the time that we have is to make it quite concrete, quite relevant to your lives and to the lives of your family and your school mates and your community. When we talk about peace, what does peace mean to anyone here? Raise your hand. Yeah. What does peace mean to you? Anyone? Go ahead. Yes?
Tranquility.
Tranquility. What else? Yes?
The lack of war.
The lack of war. What else does it mean? Yes?
Cooperation.
Cooperation. Yes?
Lack of oppression. A lack of oppression.
Lack of oppression. Anyone else? Harmony. That's right. So, all of us have experienced times in our lives where, maybe we didn't feel the kind of harmony and tranquility that's talked about. Matter of fact, in the United States, there are concerns in many families about domestic violence, child abuse, spousal abuse. Some schools have violence. There's gangs in some places, and some people are attacked on account of their race or their sexual orientation. So we look at all the violence and you wonder, is there anything you can do about it? Well, the whole idea about the Department of Peace is that we create programs in our schools at the earliest stage. We're talking about teaching children, very young children, principles of peace, being able to give peace to another person, being able to share peace with another person, looking at the other person as an aspect of oneself, to teach children at a very early age why, the idea why it's not wise to, it's not wise to hit another person, but why you wouldn't even want to think about them. So the idea of the Department of Peace is to create a whole culture of peace. But what I'd like to do is to make this a more personal journey before we get to the question of the ideas that you have about what you might be able to do, the projects that you might want to bring forward. I want to make an introduction myself of the woman who's changed my life and who's also come up with an idea that is so relevant to our country at this time in the wake of 9/11, which was a profoundly unpeaceful event. But how do we get back and connect ourselves, within ourselves, to a place of peace? So I'd like to ask Elizabeth if she would join me up here. I'd like to introduce my wife, Elizabeth, who came up with an idea that plugs right into the Department of Peace, and it's because it's about connecting with individual aspirations for peace and security. Please join me in welcoming Elizabeth.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here. So, as Dennis said, really this investigation of peace is, we've heard it's the absence of war. We hear of big, wonderful words like tranquility and harmony, but how do we really reach that place within ourselves? After 9/11, which was a tremendous series of catastrophic events, a media and a political machine came into play, which spun actually an opportunity of great hope when the heart of the world was open to the American people. It spun it in a way which was very negative, in which people actually expressed their grief through a political system that waged war, instead of reaching out to the world and starting to connect and make new relationships. The 9/10 Forum is something that Dennis and I are working on. It's a form of discussion of who were we before 9/11? What were our highest aspirations? How did the world see us, and how did we see the world? How did we see our family's life developing? How did we see that we would grow? Where we would travel? What do we want to do? Now, I would like to pose that question to you now, just very, very briefly. If you could, in just 1 minute, discuss that on your table of who were you before 9/11? think of a story that really reflects who you were. Anything. When was it that you felt most secure before 9/11? Would you do that for me?
Slightly less pissed off than US Yeah.
Just an example, one moment, when maybe you felt secure because you were at home with your family, sitting in your own place, you felt secure, you were walking alone in the forest.
Hi everyone.
Oh,
So, have you had a minute to really think back to your lives before 9/11? Who in this room can actually remember a time before 9/11? Yeah? How about, no, I mean really, so who can't? Can somebody put their hands up? Good, I'm really pleased because very often when I come and speak to young people and I ask them a question about 9/10, lots of young people say to me, I can't remember what it was like before 9/11. So I'm really, really pleased that you can. I'm really pleased that some young people, as I was speaking to some people at this table, we were talking about what it felt like for them to be secure. Because in our dialogue recently, in the last few years, we've had this question of what is it, of security, national security, international security, the war on terror, etc., etc. But this question of what it is to be secure in ourselves. And as speaking to these young people here, they came up with some lovely memories. Would you like to tell the people here what your memory was when you felt most secure? Oh, go on, please, just for a second. Can I share it with them? Come on. Because when people think of peace, they often think in abstract terms. It's really important that we find out when it was that we felt most at peace and most secure. Will you tell me what you told me?
Well, there was this time when me and my sister,
Okay.
it's just some memory I have when me and my sister were at a park and we were like having our picture taken, and I just remember we were really happy and all. So.
So this is a memory that this young lady has that's really embedded in her heart from when she was in the park with her sister having her photograph taken. That's not very abstract, that's a real experience. So what I'm trying to show to you is that peace is something which is in our everyday life. It's something that we feel, we just have to acknowledge, and it's there in the most simple moments and in the most beautiful form. So when we look at the dialogue of the 9/10 forum, the reason why I brought it up, I'll explain later, is really looking at the experiences that we've had when we felt most love in our lives, when we felt most part of our communities, when we felt most secure. And some other people have said to me, oh, it's when I'm snuggled under my duvet and I've been watching a film. I mean, it can be any moment. But I want you to really think about the moments in your lives when you've really felt secure, when you felt at peace, when you felt part of your community, when you felt most proud of yourself, when you've achieved something. It doesn't have to be mega, it can just be really special to you. Because when we reclaim the moments in our lives that are very special to us, that are empowering to us, and we share them with people, we create a community around us. So the next thing that we look at is how do we take these expressions of our own experiences and look at what we had aspired to, what we aspire to today. What is it that we want to create in the world? What is it we want to become, when we want to grow into? And what kind of environment do we need in order to grow? And how can we really make an environment like that, not only for ourselves in our own lives, but for other people in our community and in our greater nation? So with that, I'd like to hand back to Dennis, because I know we don't have too much time. But this really is about aspirations, it's about our true experiences of peace, and it's about creating a vision for the future that we can all work for together.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So the whole idea is when we talk about peace, that it not be abstract, that you could recall something in your own life. And I just want all of you to know, as Elizabeth said, you have to know that the stories that you tell are just as real and authentic as anyone else would tell. It's not just the stories that you hear of, well-known people. Your stories are important. They're very important. One young lady at the table over there, Elizabeth, said that she felt that she was robbed of part of her childhood by 9/11. That's a very powerful statement, because in a way that can speak to young people all over America, having been deprived of something because of all this fear coming in. That has to have an impact on young people. But what the 9/10 Forum is about is going back to trying to reconnect with those parts of ourselves that before 9/11, were just beautiful and bright and shiny and secure and peaceful, and they're part of our life's experience. And so, as you were thinking of creating a project, you might want to give thought as to how you can call forth those understandings from your own classmates, from your own friends. And this becomes a discussion that goes really deep, very quickly. Because then you're talking about your experience and how your experience is authentic and it's relevant to everyone. That you might have a story that suddenly gets everyone else thinking, oh, that's how I feel too, or I experienced something like that, or let me share my story with you. That's why this 9/10 Forum, and this is only the second group of young people Elizabeth and I have opened up this discussion with, anywhere in America. We started a discussion months ago in Palo Alto, and it was interesting, the response in Palo Alto from many of the young people who were saying, I can't remember what it was like before 9/11. So traumatized were they that they just couldn't think about when they had these feelings of peace or security. So any comments right now? Anybody want to share anything about your experience? Did you? Go ahead. And your name? Come on up. Because this is what it's about. It's about sharing. So what do you think? How do you feel about this? What's your observation?
I think that when I was younger, it was really important to me that I could be with my brother and other friends, and I wouldn't be afraid that they would have to go to war. And that was a major thing for me, that it could actually happen. You don't think that it will happen. You think you're beyond that, and then the realization that people my age are dying, and then that people younger in Iraq. It's just the difference of having a secure world where there aren't people my age, my brother's age, going to war and dying. It's just the difference between having the security and hanging out and working on our farm and having it as something we would laugh about, that our country would never do that. So it's just actually more of the attacking Iraq than 9/11 for me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Now, just to carry this one step further, would someone like to share with us a time just before 9/11 where they felt there was something in their life that reminded them of being at peace or being really safe? Just give one more example, and we're going to move on with the discussions. Anybody want to share that with us? Yes, please come on forward, okay? And these stories, by the way, these are individual stories about your experience and how important your experience is. And if we get one story that you share that is right there, it'll help everybody remember theirs.
Well, I just thought of something, so I thought I'd come up and say it. I remember not too long before 9/11 happened, I was surfing the internet doing some research on some really left-wing political activist groups because I just thought it was cool and interesting. My parents told me, be careful, the government might put you on a list or something. And I was like, that's ridiculous. They would never ever do that. They can't infringe on your rights like that. And then after 9/11, when the Patriot Act was passed, I completely lost that illusion.
I can remember a time when I felt very peaceful. I was walking along the riverbed of the Puyallup River in Washington State. and the river was flowing very peacefully, and the wind was blowing through the trees, very kind of whispering, and it seemed like, it was a moment that could last forever. So this is the kind of, remembrance that any of us have in our lives, and you can claim it as a way of reconnecting with peace in our lives. The whole idea of the 9-10 Forum is to get us in touch with those stories that are so important to helping to anchor us into a place of peace and security. Yes?
I remember in 2002 when I tried to start a movement here in Eugene for the Children's Peace Academy, and I didn't really think about 9/11 being a factor in that, because I'm so incredibly naive, I think. And the excitement and the number of people who were responsive to that in this community. It just felt like so sure. That whole time, it was like a year, 2 years long. There were so many people really just showing up and really believing in something. And that was the last time I felt really confident in the direction we were going. And I got so burnt out that I really just dropped out of it. But I'm kind of excited to be starting a curriculum project now again. But,
Wendy?
yeah.
Hi.
And
Wow. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard from? And then we're going to, yes, please.
In 2009, moved from Costa Rica to the States.
Why don't you come on up here and show the mic, okay? Go ahead. What's your name?
Esteban.
Hey, Steve.
In 2000, I moved from Costa Rica to the United States, and the United States wasn't involved in the war, and I was looking forward to living in the United States because it was going to be a great big experience. And I started middle school, and all of a sudden, the war happened, and then I knew that. At first, I didn't know who George Bush was, but as soon as 9/11 happened, I learned that this country was going in the wrong direction. It's been quite depressing ever since that. And I haven't achieved the goals that I was expecting when I was in 6th grade, moving from Costa Rica to the States.
Wow. Anybody else? There's somebody over here. Yes, come on.
On that naive tip, I think that
Your name?
like what was that?
Okay.
So, I don't know, I'm a pretty naive person when it comes to politics, when it comes to stuff in the media and whatnot, and I think that if there's somebody like me who's standing here right now that doesn't really know much about this, and, feels they're aware that, we're in a war and this and that, but it, feels like everything's, going all right, that there's got to be tons and tons of other people out there, and I think that really getting the word out is one of the biggest things, because I personally, like I said, I don't pay attention to the media, and I don't pay attention to those things. So to myself, I think, things are great. I'm, a high school student. I'm about to graduate this year. I got a job set up for the summer, and as far as I'm concerned, things are fabulous. I got a beautiful girlfriend that's sitting right here, and that's how I feel. And then I'm sitting here right now, and I'm hearing about all this, and kind of eye-opening, especially on the note of the whole draft thing. It's pretty freaky. But I think that a huge part of peace and getting something going in that direction is getting the word out, and that's really where it stands in my mind.
Before we, thank you very much. Before we move on, does anyone want to share a personal story, though? I mean, some of this is still abstract. Could you go deeper? Tell us a personal story. Yes. And your name? Stephanie. Please do, okay? Thanks.
Yeah. So, it was right after my 6th grade year, which was 2001, so the summer of that year, and I had my bat mitzvah, and my family came, and they flew from all over the country, and it was just such a wonderful thing having them come in, and they were all there, and we were just celebrating the whole weekend, and I mean, there were no worries about travel, everybody was having like a great time, and I just felt really, really secure and accomplished. One of those wonderful moments.
Great. That's exactly what we're talking about. And you know what, as you were talking about it, you can see you're lighting up talking about it. You can see we connected that experience in our own lives. Anyone else want to try their personal story about some time when they felt real secure? Anyone else want to try? Do you want to try, Paul?
I remember back before 9/11, I was getting ready to start my second year of college and hanging out with my friends, and it seemed like we had our whole lives ahead of us, and it just seemed like the future was something that we could just, like we could take it for granted, like it was going to be there, and there was time. There wasn't any sense of urgency that we had this time where we could sit back and not really worry about anything.
So, Paul, tell us a specific story. I mean, maybe you could describe the time when you were with your friends, but tell us in that kind of texture. What was a specific event?
I can remember being with my friends at a party and sitting around a fire, and just the energy of the group was very relaxed. It was very laid back, and we were just having a good time, and we didn't really have too much to be concerned with. And that's the feeling that I feel that hasn't gone away since that point, is that sense of urgency, that it's time to act right now, that we need to be involved doing as much as we can, because I don't know, you need to find that peace that seems like we don't have to worry, everything's gonna be all right.
Thank you, Paul. And the young lady, if you could give us a personal example of something that you felt that you could share with us. Okay, thank you. What's your name? Minnie, thank you.
When I was in elementary school before 9/11, I traveled a lot between here and Connecticut, and I would strike up conversations in the airport with complete strangers with no apparent regard to anything at all. And even with the security guards and everybody with the metal wands. And after 9/11, I traveled to Connecticut again, and they were different. And I didn't trust them anymore.
Thank you very much. Well, what I think would be great to do right now is at each table, talk about, for the next 5 minutes, let's say 10 minutes. At 5 o'clock, I'm going to ask for a report from each table, brief report on an idea about what you could do to create projects that would relate to bringing principles of peace to a community, small group, could deal with any of the elements of the Department of Peace I talked about, or you may have some other ones, and then just ask one person to share it with the group, or if you want to, if it's your idea, you can do that. But let's just take 10 minutes. At 5 o'clock, we'll come back and just start engaging each other if you could. And we'll be back to you in 10 minutes. Thanks. We'll come around the table and talk. So what I think would be great if we could do it is to have one person. Okay, the ideas are going to be written on the board. Okay, let's start with this table here. And I'd like you to. Does this table have anything to report? Yes. Okay, please come up. Okay, go ahead.
Educating the public so they can make better decisions was our first idea. And then our second idea was making friends through projects, like maybe there would be a night where like everyone got together and played chess or something, and so you could make new friends so the community would be stronger. And then there was also like getting schools participate in meditation, like 10 minutes in the morning or something. So
continue that throughout the rest of their lives and be comfortable meditation.
Yeah.
Instead of a pledge of allegiance.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Let's thank that table for the wonderful suggestions. Okay, does this table have a report? Okay, so who's going to call? Who wants to go? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we also talked about the importance of education and public education. And another idea that came from our table is having, setting up kind of like a pen pal system, but with webcams, connecting youth from this country with youth from all over the world. So you can use the internet to communicate and kind of cross the language barrier. And another thing, there's a talk briefly about, my friends and I have a plan called the PeaceNet that's a pretty extensive plan. We put a lot of thought into it. And basically what that idea is to use art and music to bring the community together and organize events that are both entertaining and educational, and focusing on including the whole community and those aspects of the community that get pushed to the fringes, making sure those groups are included too. Creating a culture of peace here at home by focusing on networking and working together.
Thank you very much, Paul. Very good. Okay, we're going to ask, who's going to give the report from this day? Okay, would you like to? Okay, please come up.
So the first thing that we ended up talking about was high schools and how do you incorporate high school kids into this whole thing. And I am a member of my school's Peace Club, and I know that in order to or at least in my opinion, if you're going to want to try to do something at the government level, you need to have support at a base structure level. And I see a good way of doing that by making like a structure for peace clubs or something like that all around the United States, and having a structure, maybe like a government mandated curriculum sort of thing that would go along with the clubs that you could implement throughout the country. Another thing that was mentioned at our table was bringing back programs that were started, that have already been started, like the student ambassador program, I guess, and there were other things that were started. What were some of the other ones? Yeah, like that's more of a government level thing that's kind of hard for us to do, but we can bring back talking about the United Nations and talking about the League of Nations and talking about things like that. And I know that there are only 2 graduate programs in the United States that offer conflict resolution studies as a major, and I think that's really problematic. And I think that that's something that can be changed and brought to the university level, and get that going and get programs like that started all over. And then sort of a bigger thing that we ended up talking about was the word peace itself is sort of attributed to like the counterculture, unfortunately. In a way, it's sort of unfortunate that it's only attributed to the counterculture. And we often sort of agree that peace and peacefulness and, hippies and all that stuff is kind of attributed to one thing. In one way, we need to kind of find a way to get rid of those stereotypes of peace being attributed to only things like that and get everybody involved with the word peace, or maybe possibly finding other ways to describe peace. Like, does that sort of make sense? Like how there's too many people that just think peace is a hokey thing, and that we want to find a way to change that.
Thank you. And if we were to take the 2 ideas that come from both of these tables, and maybe from all 3, is that you may be able to create like peace ambassadors and create sort of your own type of United Nations, even within a community, where people who come from different countries, or whose grandparents may have come from different countries, or great-grandparents, that you would represent that that nation in a community of nations, which the UN is, and that each is an ambassador. There's all kinds of possibilities where you become a citizen diplomat. Let's take this table, and who would like to give the report? Do you have a report? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so
first idea we had was for kids to get them submerged in other cultures. And this kind of goes along with the idea of cooperation, because you can't really cooperate if you don't understand other people. I think that's what we find when, for example, your UN ambassador doesn't know anything about other cultures. I don't know who that might be. We had trust building games in schools. Like in elementary schools, the only thing I could think of is like that one where people stand on the table and somebody falls back and you have to catch them. Kind of stuff that makes kids like trust each other in schools. I don't know, any other kind of trust building games I couldn't think of. Teaching yoga, I think they already said meditation. I think that's a no-brainer. Okay. The other idea, which I'm surprised I didn't think of, something else thought of this, was to have people in some kind of not armed forces, but like some kind of military function. Because as Americans, we are pretty independent-minded, and we're thinking as an institution how to get people to cooperate. And I just think it's really good. Like if you've ever marched with a whole platoon of people before, or you've been where a drill sergeant is telling you about push-ups and doing calisthenics and that kind of stuff, or you have some kind of project you have to do as a group. I think anytime you have some kind of like that sense to it. So the view we had was in certain countries they actually have an institute that everybody has to go to the military. We were thinking, what if the military force was a faction of the Department of Peace? So it wasn't like the Department of Defense, it wasn't an armed force, it was a army of peace force that everybody had to go to. The other thing we thought of was just making cities more beautiful, maybe having city councils. Because it's like, if you're in some kind of trashy suburb, it's hard to feel peaceful. But even if you're disturbed and you're going down some highway and there's beautiful flowers and there's trees and there's archways and vines and stuff, you're going to appreciate that. So the idea was to get like people to decide how they're going to make their cities more beautiful. We're fortunate we're in a place like Eugene in the springtime. It's always pretty beautiful. But even still, I think there's always more room for trees and greenery and bushes and vines and flowers. And that was our last idea.
Thank you very much. And with this table, I can give a report. It's interesting how you start to see the practical application of what these reports reveal. Very important to realize that peace is practical. Go ahead.
Okay. So hopefully I'll speak for everyone well. I think what we realized is that our military is mainly made up of the lower class. And if you get in trouble, one of the main things that they say is, well, go into the military, that'll fix you up. Or you go into a military school. And I think that if we had after-school programs that keep kids out of trouble and make them feel better about themselves, that would help out a community, help out the elderly or the homeless. Like if you read a novel in middle school, for example, like Oliver Twist, and then said, there are people like this in our community. How about we go help the homeless children with this? Or how about there's this park that is run down in Blackberries, how about we fix it up with our spare time instead of getting in trouble or going and drinking with people and getting arrested and then getting put in juvie. And then the next thing that people always say is military. And I think that if we fund sports, that people say that'll help keep you out of trouble, and art in the schools, and have a supportive environment, that I think that would help out. So an after-school program, funding in schools, and that's, I think, what we were trying to say.
Great idea. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Okay, we have another report coming forward. Wendy? Okay, I know that people have to leave. We'll move on.
Okay, so we'll do this really quick. Fund schools, fund after-school activities, that's totally basic. Great idea. So we had a lot of ideas about creating a peace education curriculum and actually paying teachers to do it, because then they would be inspired to do it. And that would be a way that they could get funding in the school, and as a requirement for getting that funding, they would have to teach some aspect of peace education, whether it be gardening and environmental education or conflict resolution.
outdoor experiences, making that more accessible to people, and nature restoration as part of a curriculum. We thought about creating an incubator that had microfinancing for different peace projects. So you could come and say, I have this project, and just like they do in India, everybody gets $500 to start their project off, and ideas about how to continue to fund it. And also increasing peer mediation in schools, cross-cultural competency, doing street theater, giving kids access to street theater, a bunch of teachers at this table. So people-to-people reparations and rebuilding in Iraq and the rest of the world. I don't know this discipline, curriculum, connecting mind-body. Oh, so the whole mind-body connection in schools and peace, PE and social studies. Being taught by other cultures.
Reverse Peace Corps. Other cultures coming to our culture to teach us about peace.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. Okay, we have 2 more tables left in the corner there. Yes. Do you have a report from your table? If you do, come on forward. Well, how about one of the young people? Because the whole idea is to make sure that those who are here as representing the youth have a chance. Chacon, thank you.
So we thought, one of the first ideas was like a relocalization, so it's like individual self-dependent communities where obviously they'd still be connected to the whole country, but just kind of, so they're more of a community, so people are, get along better and more dependent on their more smaller areas, because if they have, people feel, I think, safer kind of thing. And we've talked about a whole bunch of stuff, so it's not particularly clear, but that was the main idea.
That's great, thank you.
I visited some of those communities. So one is on the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska. It's an amazing thing when you see it. And when people come together in these intentional communities, it is incredible what happens in terms of how people live on the same principle. It's an amazing thing. Go ahead, the final presentation here. Please come forward so we can all hear you, okay? And thank you.
Making higher education more affordable to learn about other cultures to keep people out of the military. And also, every neighborhood having a potluck for peace and once a month, and just really work towards either a potluck or a get-together, but you start with a meeting and then you share food and you really try to stay close to your community. And also daily announcements at schools about peace and peace education in public schools, just high school and college students going to schools and talking about peace to the little kids.
Thank you very much. Now, we've just been here for a little more than an hour, and I want you to notice how all of a sudden you have all these ideas, you kind of percolate the ideas of peace, and in the series of suggestions that you made, Stephanie said it? Yes. In the series of suggestions that you made, one of the things that I felt was really powerful when you start talking about having potluck dinners, when you bring people together and share food, it's a very powerful thing, especially if they don't necessarily know each other. It's a way of bringing people together, so it's a terrific idea. Yes?
Especially if it's local food that you've grown yourself or your friends have grown.
Very good point. I mean, this is where we start to even get deeper as to how we connect with each other. I think this has been a real terrific and productive session, which has come up with all kinds of ideas, which I think would be great, is if everyone's email is available, we could create the list and email it to everyone, and then maybe you will decide to have a follow-up meeting to share this with the broader communities, to take it to your school, to your high schools and colleges. But this is really terrific. Let's give everyone a hand who participated. Thank you. Join me in thanking Elizabeth for participating. Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. And I want to say, it's just so great to be here. This is a community of young people with real powerful consciousness, and the ideas that you have are going to change the world, make it a better place. So thank you for who you are, and also for who you are becoming. So thank you.
Thank you very much.